It was 3:47 a.m. local time. The sky over Venezuela's western coast was completely illuminated for 8 seconds. It was not lightning or an industrial accident. There were 3 successive, perfectly coordinated impacts launched from more than 1,000 kilometers away. In a matter of minutes, a vital energy complex, the Cardón Norte fuel depot, was turned into a burning mass visible from space. The operation, according to leaked military sources, was allegedly executed by a U.S. air unit from the Atlantic, using long-range precision weaponry. The attack occurred precisely at 3:47 a.m. on October 18, 2025, when a B-2 Spirit strategic bomber, possibly escorted by a cell of B-52H Stratofortresses, launched 6 AGM-158B JASS MER missiles from outside Venezuelan airspace. The objective was clear: to disable the main fuel storage depot on the western coast, located 28 kilometers from Coro, Falcon State. The operation lasted less than 7 minutes from the first launch until the total loss of power at the complex. According to preliminary reports, 127 military personnel were at the site, of whom 23 were injured and 5 remain missing. It all began the night before, at 11:30 p.m. on October the 17th, when a USP-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft detected transport movements at the oil terminal. Satellite imagery confirmed the entry of tanker trucks into the storage area. At 12:12 a.m., the Joint Command in Florida activated the Limited Energy Interdiction Protocol. At 1:05 a.m., 2 B-2 bombers took off from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, heading east. After a technical stopover above the Mid-Atlantic, where they refueled in flight with a KC-46 Pegasus, they began the approach phase at 2:55 a.m. The launch was carried out from an altitude of 12,800 meters at a distance of 1,080 kilometers from the target. Each JASSM-ER missile, with an operational range of up to 925 kilometers, was programmed to hit specific points: 2 on the main valves, 2 on the storage tanks, and 2 on the pumping station. The explosions were registered in chain at 3:47, 3:49, and 3:51, generating a fire that spread at an estimated speed of 22 meters per second. At 4:03 a.m., RQ-4 Global Hawk reconnaissance drones flew over the area to confirm the destruction. Infrared images showed temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius in the area of the disaster. The smoke covered a 15-kilometer radius, and the shock waves were felt as far as the town of Dabajuro, over 40 kilometers away. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean Sea, the destroyer USS Roosevelt DDG-80 maintained position 145 nautical miles away, intercepting Venezuelan military communications. The local air defense, composed of Book M2 and Pachora 2M systems, failed to detect the incoming missiles. The JASSMERS flew close to the terrain, using a pre-programmed evasion route over the Gulf of Venezuela. At 5:15 a.m., the fire was still burning, and the port of Amway had been completely closed. There was no official communication for the next 5 hours, while commercial satellites detected a generalized blackout in Falcón and Zulia. What appeared to be an isolated attack began to take on a much broader geopolitical dimension. In Washington, however, the atmosphere was different. Department of Defense sources cited by the Global Strategic Monitor chain claimed that the operation was a demonstration of long-distance projection capability, although they denied a direct attack. According to an analyst from the RAND Corporation, it was a tactical test within the framework of flexible deterrence, a concept that seeks to pressure states considered hostile through specific, non-attributable actions. The Southern Command maintained silence, but 2 hours after the attack, activity was detected at the Curaçao Air Base, where a KC-135 stratotanker landed, which allegedly participated in the aerial refueling. The flight log coincided with the time frame of the attack. The Venezuelan reaction began to take shape at 11:40 a.m. when the Air Force deployed two Su-30 Mk2s to the north, toward the Caribbean, with orders to patrol the maritime routes up to 120 miles from the coast. However, they found no signs. The air operation was suspended at 2:05 p.m. after running out of fuel. The country entered a state of uncertainty. National media reported contradictory versions. Some spoke of internal sabotage, others of an invisible foreign incursion. But what was evident was the pattern of precision, the simultaneity of the impacts, and the total absence of prior warning. The attack had been surgical, almost clinical, and this raised an inevitable question within the high command. How had the United States managed to execute such a deep action without triggering a single Venezuelan radar? The first hypotheses emerged just hours after the attack. Analysts at the Moscow Institute for Strategic Studies claimed that the operation showed advanced integration between satellite intelligence, electronic warfare, and precision weaponry. According to their reports, the United States allegedly used a multi-vector communication scheme, where each JASSMER missile received real-time correction through the AEHF-6 satellite, the same one that coordinates the Pentagon's command network for global operations. This synchronization would explain why Venezuelan systems did not detect prior activity. The BUK-M2 and Pechora-2M radars, calibrated for conventional threats, cannot register such low trajectories or encrypted signals with random frequencies. Furthermore, the attack would have relied on microwave interference launched from an RQ-180 type unmanned aerial vehicle, which flew over the Caribbean at high altitude and emitted pulses to saturate the tracking channels. Brazilian military analyst André Mendonça explained that the key to the attack was not the power, but the distance. Launching missiles from more than 1,000 kilometers means avoiding all direct confrontation and maintaining plausible deniability. No pilot entered Venezuelan airspace, no radar detected the exact origin, and therefore, no conclusive evidence can officially attribute the act to the United States. However, the technical evidence pointed in a single direction. Fragments recovered in the impact zone, found at 3:40 p.m. by decontamination teams, showed remnants of 2,195 aluminum lithium alloy, the same one used in U.S. JASSM series missiles. Furthermore, the explosion marks corresponded to a WDU-42B penetrating warhead, designed to pierce steel structures before detonation. At 5:25 p.m., Reuters agency reported that the Venezuelan strategic fuel reserve had dropped by 43%, paralyzing nationwide distribution for the following days. Energy experts in the Caribbean warned that the attack not only affected Venezuela, but also the maritime routes that supply refineries in Curaçao and Trinidad. The most unsettling thing is that, despite the magnitude of the impact, no Latin American country issued a direct condemnation. The foreign ministries merely expressed concern, which hinted at a tacit acceptance that something bigger was brewing, a change in the strategic balance in the region. And the fact is that beyond the fire and smoke, the message seemed clear. The United States is no longer just watching, it is now acting. However, what was it really looking for with this surgical strike? Was it a war rehearsal, an energy warning, or a high-risk political maneuver? At 6 p.m. on October 18th, 2025, the fires were still burning in Cardón Norte. The scene was apocalyptic. Black columns ascending to the sky, a horizon stained red, and the penetrating smell of burned fuel spreading for kilometers. But beyond the visible disaster, a political and military board of global dimensions began to form. According to sources from the Caribbean Institute for Strategic Studies, the attack would have three possible motivations. The first, energy interdiction. That is, cutting Venezuela's ability to export or store fuel in the short term. In less than 12 hours, the country lost 60% of its operational reserve. The second, a demonstration of range and precision, a direct signal to Caracas's allies, mainly Russia and Iran, that any strategic installation in the Western Hemisphere can be reached without prior warning. The third, coercive pressure, a maneuver to force negotiations under unfavorable conditions, especially around oil contracts in the Gulf of Paria. At 7:10 p.m., observation satellites detected unusual movements at El Libertador Air Base, where 3 S-300 VM batteries were put on maximum alert. However, the radars remained silent, fearing a new wave of attacks. The presidential order was clear: do not respond until the aggressor is confirmed. That restraint avoided an immediate escalation, but left the Venezuelan Air Force in an uncomfortable position, armed, vigilant, and without a declared enemy. Meanwhile, in the Pentagon, analysts at the Joint Strategic Operations Center evaluated the result of the attack. Damage reports, leaked hours later by the War Insight portal, confirmed 96% accuracy in the impacts and total neutralization of the target. No missile was intercepted. Planners described the operation as exemplary in stealth, precision, and synchronization. In military circles, there was discreet talk of the Falcon pattern, an attack model for future hybrid warfare scenarios. Internationally, the response was restrained but revealing. China called for an independent investigation under UN supervision, while Russia called the event an act of energy terrorism. In contrast, the United States and NATO maintained technical silence, refusing to comment until they have verifiable information. The diplomatic balance was fragile, and every word could tip the scales. At midnight, the flames in Cardón finally subsided. Emergency teams confirmed 18 dead and 41 seriously injured, in addition to irreversible structural losses. The magnitude of the damage marked the biggest blow to Venezuelan energy infrastructure in 2 decades. However, what most worried international observers was the strategic clarity of the attack, a surgical operation of high technological cost, executed without visible presence and with devastating effects. The message seemed not only directed at Venezuela, but at the entire region. The ability to hit key targets without crossing borders represents a new era of deterrence, where power is no longer measured by the number of troops, but by precision and distance. In the following hours, satellite reports detected fleet movement in the Atlantic and signs of anomalous activity at Caribbean air bases. No one admitted it publicly, but in the diplomatic corridors of Brasilia and Bogota, an unsettling concept was already being discussed: silent energy warfare. The October 18th attack not only destroyed a fuel depot, it changed the rules of the game in the Western Hemisphere. From that day on, any spark, any drone, any signal on the radar could be the prelude to a new confrontation without visible borders. And while satellites still registered the residual glow over the Venezuelan coast, an idea was consolidating in global strategic thinking. The next war will not be fought over territory, but over energy. And it has already begun. What is your opinion? Do you believe this attack was a covert US operation or an internal sabotage maneuver? Leave it in the comments and share your analysis. Are we seeing the start of a new global energy war or just a strategic warning? Your opinion matters. I want to read it below.